please, and hopefully if there's time, they'll answer all the questions. Thank you. Hilly, on to you.
Right, well, thank you once again, Aaron. Thank you for setting this up, and thank you for everyone for being here. I think we're extremely humbled by the support we have received over the past 5 weeks. This is our 5th event. As each week passes, our following has increased, and it's really on the basis that we're doing this to bring you some of South Africa's top business minds, entrepreneurs, community leaders, and this week's obviously no different. My goal is obviously to provide as many young individuals with the insights and experiences of Africa's and the rest of the world's finest minds. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's speakers, Eric and Dionne Ellerine. Eric Ellerine has been operating in the South African market since 1950. He founded and built up Ellerine Holdings from a humble beginnings into a listed retail empire with his brother Sydney. Since 2000, when Eric's involvement in the retail operation came to an end, he has been focusing on long-term investments through the Eric Ellerine Trust and Ellerine Bros. Eric has served on the boards of Redefine Properties, Bidvest Limited, and on 11 other publicly listed company boards as a non-executive director. Dionne was admitted as an attorney of the Supreme Court of South Africa. She lived in London for 11 years, where she managed commercial property investments for offshore clients. On return to South Africa, she was appointed as a director of the Ellerine Bros and serves as a chief executive officer of the Eric Ellerine Trust. Dionne is a non-executive director on the boards of New Park Limited and Echo Palsco Properties. So it gives me great honor to hand over to both of you, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Eric first.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. As you can see, I've got my daughter with me, and I'm sitting the other side, and I've got my wife on the other side because she nags me all the time, and I've warned her that she mustn't say a word while I'm speaking. But before I start, and I mean this most sincerely, this David Mazinta is a rabbi, but he's also a magician, because what he does is unreal. How he gets through the 1,000,001 things that he's got on the go. He's got everybody's phone numbers in his book, and he phones, and he doesn't waste your time. If you have a 2-minute conversation with him, it's a long time. David, I must thank you for what you're doing for the Jewish community and for South Africa and for the underprivileged people. It's really an honor to be invited. It's not the first time that you've hooked me in to one of your talks, or one of the events that you host. Having said that, I'm going to start off by saying that being locked up for 54 weeks is no joke at all. It's not. It's been so tough. It's been so difficult. And one can't wait to get out of the apartment that we live in. But hopefully there'll be a little bit more easing, and maybe we'll be able to get out more than that. Having said that, just let me start off on the political side. I'm not going to speak much because I'm not a politician. I never have been. And I must tell you that had it not been for yes, I've seen it. Had it not been for Nelson Mandela and for F.W. de Klerk in 1992, this country would have had a bloodbath, the likes of which has never been seen in the world before. Because of the two of them, eventually, after they convinced Nelson Mandela to leave prison because they offered him a discharge 2 years before he accepted it. And between the cool heads and the intelligent people on both sides, as a matter of fact, our present President, Cyril Ramaphosa, was one of those, and so are other very eminent people. As a result of that, we have a constitution which is the best, and there's equality for all, and that's so important. we must keep in mind that for all these years, the indigenous population were either under colonial rule, under nationalist rule, and now only when Nelson came in were they under the rule of that first person of color. And Nelson Mandela is world famous. Both him and F.W. de Klerk won Nobel Prizes for peace, and deservedly so to both of them. Having said that, I'd now like to turn to a gentleman by the name of Jacob Zuma. I think you've heard of him. When Jacob Zuma came on board, the economy was doing beautifully. In the years that we had the three previous presidents, Mandela, then we had Thabo Mbeki, and then we had F.W. de Klerk, and now, of course, we've got Cyril Ramaphosa. Dionne, why are you looking so concerned?
Very funny.
Much better when you smile. Cyril Ramaphosa.
Talk about the future.
Pardon?
Talk about the future.
Well, I'm going to. I just wanted to say that Cyril Ramaphosa, when he got elected, made so many promises. And unfortunately, he delivered on so few of them. He's a wonderful guy. He's an intelligent guy. He's an honest guy. And funnily enough, I happen to know him well because when he was part of the
Trade unions.
The ANC,
Trade unions.
Yeah. He came up against me for the first time and took out half my staff on strike. I met him again 2 years later when they went on strike, but this time it was only a matter of days because Cyril and I sat down in my office and discussed it like gentlemen. He gave a bit, I gave a bit, we settled it, and we've lived happily ever after. And on top of it, he happens to be in the same neighborhood as us, and every time we drive past the house, we look there to see if he's home or if he's out. If there's a lot of cars, then you know he's home. If there are no cars in the street, then you know that he's somewhere traveling. But let me leave politics at that. Let's speak about what's going on at the moment, and particularly in business. It's an absolute shambles the way they imposed the rules for the lockdown to allow so many people to be locked in, so many people out of work, so many smaller businesses, not to mention a large number of bigger businesses, are never going to reopen. They just won't have the funds to do that. And as a result, we've already seen tens of thousands of people losing their job, and unfortunately, more are going to lose their job over the next 2 months. Winter is round the corner, and the disease, when it gets colder, they breed faster. And until we get rid of them, we're going to find that the number of people catching the virus is going to go up, and the number of people that are going to die, unfortunately, are also going to go up. But We're hoping to come down to the third stage, and we'll see what happens. One of the big mistakes that I think President Ramaphosa made was with the two of them, Dionne. There was the selling of liquor
And
and alcohol.
cigarettes and alcohol that he banned.
Cigarettes and alcohol. Do you know how many people are out of work as a result of that? Thousands and thousands. And there was absolutely no reason why they should have done that. Because to sell a bottle of wine wouldn't have done that much harm. And to sell cigarettes, unfortunately, they don't smoke cigars. They're losing hundreds of millions in revenue. So that was a big fault as far as I'm concerned. But having said that, we in South Africa are fortunate. We have everything going for us here. We have the most wonderful weather. We have so many other things that, given a chance and sufficient money, there's no reason why all the different types of businesses, factories, shouldn't be able to prosper. No reason whatsoever. Also, as far as I'm concerned, we have to give the previously disadvantaged people a chance. These little shops in the townships, and there are thousands of them in South Africa, contribute a large number of jobs to the country. And we've seen some of these little ones become big ones. And you've had a lot of meetings with some of these gentlemen. I'm amazed to see how smart some of them are. And we've actually gone into business with a few of them. And I must say, it's a pleasure being with them. We must give them a chance. We must look after the unemployed. We have to make sure there's enough food. And of course, we have to be prepared in the hospitals and all the other places for the intake of many, many more. And also, it would be nice to see that the people that issue the figures do it properly, because believe it or not, yesterday they said 2 people had courted, and today's news they said 6 people. How can there be only 8 people that have courted in 2 days, when some of the days as many as 30 and 40 catch it? But now, most likely, tomorrow or the day after, we'll see another 50 or 60 for the day, and it's going to build up. But we do hope to find that we have the cure as soon as possible, and that everybody abides to the rules of the lockdown. Once again, David, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming along. And it's my pleasure now to hand you over to Dionne.
Well done, Dad. So, Hilly, do you want to talk, or should I just carry on?
Carry on.
Carry on.
Okay. So, how do you follow such a remarkable man, both literally and figuratively? You don't. You pave your own way. One must take lessons learned from the previous generations, but adapt them to the times we are living in to better prepare for the future. The days of buying Anglo shares and holding them for generations, it's gone. The world's evolving, It's creating many unknowns, and we have to see what's going to happen in the future. At the beginning of the year, if anyone would have said to you there was going to be a pandemic that would come along and that we would change our lives and it would change the way we do businesses, no one would have believed them, but here we are. So today I would like to talk about le door va door, from generation to generation. The lessons I've learned in a family business from my dad and what I would pass on to my children. One of Eric's famous saying is, you must always back the person and not necessarily the business. And in these times, I completely agree with that. A great CEO will steer a business through difficult times. And I've become a bookworm in lockdown. I'm reading a book, What It Takes, Lessons in the Pursuit of Excellence, written by Stephen Schwarzman, who was the chairman, CEO, and co-founder of Blackstone. And he says, never lose money. Very easy to say, but not so easy to do. But he also writes that it's very important who you employ. You must always hire 10s if you can. They're proactive about sensing problems and designing solutions. This would take the business in new directions without being told what to do. This crisis is going to separate those businesses that crumble and those that are going to rise up and soar in spite of the problems. But you know, sometimes failure or the threat of failure is what gives the business the potential to change course and make it more successful in the future. So we mustn't be disheartened. Eric also often says to me, always stick to your knitting, meaning people should try and invest in businesses and industries they know something about. COVID's going to bring about many opportunities, but this crisis redefines things in that it's going to be quite unknown how long it's going to take for companies, and especially those in South Africa, to recover, because we don't know the time scale till we have a functioning economy. I think to date, the costs are staggering 5 to 16% of GDP. So what do we do? Warren Buffett always says, never waste a good crisis. But even this time, he's been so cautious and has been divesting from the markets and holding on to cash. I think we must be alert to opportunities, but at the same time, we must be patient. The JSE's decreased by about 13% year to date. So yes, it's not, I think there's a disconnect between what's on the street and what's on the markets. But no one's going to ring a bell when the market reaches the bottom. So I think it's safer to wait for it to begin rising again before you invest, and rather miss that first risky uptick. Just my advice. I think companies need to respond quickly to crises. They need to mobilize resources. They sometimes need to amend the internal processes. But another important thing close to my heart is mentorship. I think it's an absolute necessity. So if anyone out there is lucky enough to have a mentor, it's time to lean on them for their experience and for their advice. But mentorship goes in two directions, and it's often the mentor learns things from the mentee. So when I was discussing this talk with my children, they had lots to say, and in fact, the mentor was supposed to be me, and my children, the mentees, I learned from them. They said to me, there's a new business concept called triple bottom line reporting. Shows my age because I didn't know about it. And with that, businesses have to be aware of people, the planet, and the profits. So profits is easy. The core purpose of any business must be to focus on making profits and keeping shareholders happy. But in order to survive in the coming times, it's not going to be enough. We're going to have to consider people and the planet too. So with people, the business has to have a positive impact on the community in which the business operates by uplifting the communities and also by skills development. And it also has to create a happy working environment for its employees. I think what this crisis has shown us, this concept of working from home, and then we may in the future question the need for high rental office space. I mean, I saw yesterday a Twitter from the CEO of Twitter who said that he's informed his workforce that they can work from home indefinitely. And this will allow them to employ the best talent from around the world. Eric, don't worry, I will come back to the office. I'm not telling you I'm not coming back.
Good.
But lastly, planet. Businesses have to go even further. They have to think about the planet. They have to engage in sustainable practices, recycling, limiting CO2 emissions. And we've just got to safeguard the future generations. So we've had the mentors, we've had the mentees. Then you come to my generation. What are we? I think we're the sandwich generation. And my personal advice is to surround yourself with very, very clever people. I'm sure a lot of my business partners are listening. And if they are, I thank each and every one of them for being cleverer than me and allowing me to learn from them. I also think that you have to look at a woman's perspective. Diversity is important. Often a different perspective or even some EQ around a boardroom table isn't a bad thing. I'm just grateful that I've had the pearls of wisdom passed down to me. But in order to survive this tumultuous time, we have to all understand we're not going back to the normal. We have a new world order where respect for your fellow human being is just as important as the bottom line. A world where people are a little bit less materialistic and maybe a little bit more caring. I'm also grateful and aware of the values that Judaism has instilled in me. And since the current of COVID-19, maybe a bit even more accessible to its teaching and open to its teachings. So Rabbi Masinta, thank you. I thank you for this opportunity to reminisce a little bit, absorb life's lessons, and prompt the thinking process of how we can pass on these lessons to future generations. Thanks, guys, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that inspirational words and for giving up your time. I think I've already been getting some SMS on my phone to say it's an amazing achievement and well done, and you guys are really inspirational. So thank you so much for your time. And I think before we all run out of time, we should probably just jump straight into questions. And we're already getting some comments in the chat. Well done. You're amazing. From Sharon Fingelson. Eric, well done. So people really have enjoyed what you had to say. And there are some good questions coming through as well. But sorry, Dionne, let me just jump in straight to you if you don't mind. I remember you mentioned, yeah, you read a great book, What It Takes. I also just finished it. Is there any other books that you're reading at the moment that you would advise or that you think is a good read? Some people spend a lot of time in hands, and it's a bit of a challenge to find a good book. I'm not ready, but
it's amazing. I haven't had time to read books for years, and I found this lockdown I've become an absolute bookworm. So I can grab your books from my desk. Another brilliant book I read was called Essentialism. So it really is a fantastic book. And one of the things I took out of this book, it says you must learn to say no to people despite the relationship. So Eric, sometimes I'm going to have to learn to say no to you despite the fact that I love you very much. And Rabbi Masinta, let's go to you now. Because even though I tried to say no to you, you weren't taking no for an answer. So I think I learned a lot from this book, Essentialism, and a must read for everyone. But you've got to put what you read into practice as well.
Amazing. Agreed. I think that maybe let's take that on to the next question. I'm saying you've probably been working with your father for the past 10 years, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe even longer. What advice would you give to somebody currently in a family business to navigate so that relationships aren't hindered, and the best way to come together and ensure what takes preference? Is the family relationship, is the business? Do you have any tricks that you can share with us that ensure you still can maintain your relationship as a father-daughter, but also do what's best for the business at the same time? Maybe we can get your view and hopefully Eric's as well.
Sure.
Can I answer this one? Or Dionne, do you want to answer it?
Eric,
Go ahead, go ahead.
no, go.
You answer it. Okay. Okay. You know, family relationships in a business become extremely awkward. It's okay with the first generation, like my brother and I, we were partners for 57 years, and we never had a single argument in the 57 years. Yeah. I was partners with the late
Mark Wayne.
Mark Wayner. Mark Wayner and I have been partners for 29 years, and we get along so famously because with us, a handshake was a handshake and a deal was a deal, and it goes perfectly. But the problem is with the next generation, particularly amongst your own family and the family of your brother or sister, and to keep that together is well nigh impossible. 80% of all businesses don't survive the second generation. And when it comes to the third generation, 4% is all that survives. And therefore, it's important, while the founders, the parents are still around, that they try and get them together, give them as much learning as you possibly can, and see what you can do to settle the differences, being fair to all people concerned. But most families, unfortunately, don't do that. Thank you.
I'd like to add there. I think it's pretty well summarized. Anything else you'd like to
add anything, or are you happy?
I'm happy. I mean, I'm sure the audience is happy. It's up to you. You want to add anything?
I think you've got to just separate, you know, when you come home on a Friday night, I think it's very important not to talk business. I think you've got to separate the family relationship from the business relationship.
Agreed. Ron, is there anything you want to ask in the meantime before we turn to the Q&A section?
Yeah, sure. You know, firstly, thank you, Eric and Dionne, for an inspiring talk. It's been really informative to myself, and it seems like the panel. This question probably goes to, I mean, both of you. In a scenario in a current economic climate like this, as a mother, father, mentor, and a business owner, what advice would you give to these people who are currently under pressure and risk losing their business and are experiencing these difficulties?
One of the difficulties is that so much money is being lost that by the time it's all over, so many of these smaller businesses will all go bust. And that's where the problems come in. What are we going to do with the unemployed? And what are we going to do with people that were well off and now have lost a large portion of their fortunes? You're looking at one now. A hiding that we've taken on the stock exchange this year is beyond belief. Some shares are down as much as 30%, blue chip shares. And some of the shares are so cheap now that a lot of people from overseas, with the rand being as weak as it is, are piling in and buying up some of our gems at giveaway prices. And all that we can do is, once you see there's a turn, my advice to people that have got the means, climb into it. And for the people that unfortunately have lost everything, try and get a job or a share in a business where you'll be comfortable and where you can work with the major shareholder that you've seen. you'd be amazed how quickly you could pick things up. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. I'm not sure if Dionne, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think that people have to hold on to cash at the moment. I think cash is king because we don't know how long this is going to last. So I think that there are times to jump in and there are times not to. And I don't think that this is the time to jump in. So I think people must be cautious in these times.
So just
Thank
to
you.
touch on that, Eric, you mentioned stimulus in the economy. If you had 2 minutes with the president, what would you tell him now and what would you try get him to do as fast as possible?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, I think that's directed to
You
you.
know what he should do? He should get rid of at least half the cabinet that were forced upon him in order to get the premiership. There's some gentlemen and ladies in the cabinet that are absolutely useless. But on the other hand, I've also seen about maybe 10 of the 30-odd cabinet ministers that are really doing a good job of work. The ANC is going to fall apart in the next few years because of the different views, the one to the left and the one to the right. And Ramaphosa, who I said before, is a hell of a competent guy. I would never vote for the ANC, but if I was given if we just had to vote for a president, I can't think anybody else I'd vote for in South Africa other than Ramaphosa. But in the end, we need to get our political side right, and above all, it's time that some of those people that have stolen millions, in some cases billions of rands, are convicted and land up in jail. So far, we've seen very little of that. But hopefully, over the next 6 months to a year, we'll see some big names going to jail, and that will be a wake-up message for everybody in this country. Thank you.
I also think they have to stimulate local manufacturing, very important.
Absolutely.
I think that's going to, well, hopefully that will be encouraged going forward. But how do you do that? How do you protect jobs and how do you ensure that happens?
I think you give people, incentives, maybe tax incentives to business owners. I think that there are ways that you can stimulate the economy.
Because hopefully it's not too late when lockdown is lifted. We still have those local manufacturers actually want to maintain business and still manufacture in South Africa.
And we all have to support local.
That's the truth.
I really believe that.
I agree.
And I'm a person who travels a lot and likes imported stuff, but I'm going to make a concerted effort to support local.
We need more people like you. That's the truth. We need more people like you in this economy to support your local manufacturers and your local suppliers. Ryan, is there anything you want to add? Aaron?
Sure. Just more of a personal question before I pop into that. Do you believe businesses going forward and conducting business and trade across all different industries will somewhat return to the norm, or there will be somewhat a different norm or set a new standard, considering people's maybe risk appetite?
We'll never return to what we were before the epidemic started. It's taught us so many lessons. And with technology, it's taught us how much one can do, how much quicker and how much cheaper it is to communicate. Example being, you want to have a board meeting, instead of getting the board members to come into the offices and taking a whole morning of their time, you get them onto conference, a discussion like we're having now over
Zoom.
Yeah, thank you. And you can get things done just as quickly. that's what's happening to us now. We only allowed a small number of people into our offices, but every morning at 8 o'clock, my 4 chief, I'm not going to call them employees because they're more friends. In one case, they what?
Executives, Eric.
Executive, sorry. One of them happens to be my daughter. That we get things done quickly and more efficiently, and that we eyeball and eyeball. So therefore, communications is where a lot of money is being made. And we've already seen it with people that bought shares like Apple and many others like that, just how they've made their money. It's gone from, they gave something in the overseas newspaper where somebody that put in $5 million into Anchor when they started. Pardon?
Apple. Yeah, the
Apple.
have done very well, but they've also come off.
Well, a little bit, but they've gone up by about 500%. Nothing can go up forever and ever. There's a time where you decide who's the next Apple and go for them and spread your risk. Don't put all your money into 2 or 3 or 4 shares or into 2 or 3 buildings. Spread it, and there comes a time where they've reached the peak. Don't be scared, in the case of shares, to sell some of the shares. In case of buildings, to sell the buildings if you can, because buildings after 20 years can only go one way, and that's downwards. So you can't hold on to buildings for too long.
No, I think COVID's taught us diversification. It's very important. I mean, I think it's ironic. We all thought we were diversified, being in different industries. I don't think we ever foresaw that so many industries and so many geographies would all be hit at one time. But diversification for me is a very important thing.
Eric,
Great.
if I may ask, what was your biggest mistake in business, and what would you say is your highlight in business?
My highlight in business was thanks to Nedbank. In 2005, Nedbank were having an exceptionally poor year, and they had 11 billion rands worth of doubtful accounts. So Tom, who was the MD, gave me a shout. Person I also knew so well. He says, would you fellows be interested in buying Canal Walk in Cape Town? I said, Canal Walk in Cape Town? At that stage, it was the second largest shopping center in South Africa. I said, yes, if the price is right, we'd look at it. So I got hold of Mark Wayner. At that stage, he was with John with...
well, he consulted to Hyprop at that stage.
Yeah, and we went there, and the bid in the end, they started off with 50 bids. They narrowed it down to 4, and our bid was the second lowest of the 4. But there was one thing in our bid that we would take it immediately. And if you wanted the deal done before the 30th of June, and it was already the 27th of June, we can have it done. If you can get the agreement together, we'll sign it tomorrow morning. So the next morning we went in, it was ready, we signed it, and we only had to pay for it when we took occupation, when transfer came through, which was the 1st of November, 4 months away. They said, well, okay, do us another favor then. Will you run the business for the next 4 months? We said, with pleasure. And we put so much into it. So much was wrong. They had a shocking center manager. He was the cause of half the problem and cost Nedbank hundreds of millions of rand. And we were able to fix it up, put it in. But the little joke that I'll tell you is that the money that we had to put in for our slice, all that I did was phone up the gentleman in charge of the credit department, and I said to him, will you please lend us 270 million rand? We want to buy something. He said, of course. So we didn't lay out a farthing. All that we did was pay interest to Nedbank. That was a good lesson, and a very, very handsome one there. Although even now, even Canal Walk has come down in value, like any other property, it's going to come down.
Eric, just picking up on that property discussion, got quite a lot of interest in the audience regarding the current climate in the property industry in South Africa, as well as considering your extensive property background. What is your view on the property industry and South Africa going forward, especially perhaps guys that are involved in this industry as a developer, as an investor, or a typical residential owner?
At the moment, it's an absolute disaster, the property market, an absolute disaster. The reason is twofold. Firstly, the major companies have seen an opening and are all asking for reductions on rental. And the reductions that they're asking for is huge, sometimes as much as 40%, 30%, and people have also threatened that unless you accept our offer, we're going to move out when our lease is up in a year or so. So that's a major, major problem. And then the second problem is that the property shares were paying the best dividends on the whole market, and we were getting dividends of 8, 9, 10%. As the property values fell, you can now buy certain shares where you'll get a 16% dividend if they pay the dividend. If they don't pay the dividend, then you'll get nothing, of course. But the time will come where things get back to normal and where the tenants don't rule the roost and they'll go up in value. But at the moment, I wouldn't touch anything to do with property until things get back to normal.
But it will normalize, and I think that with the REIT legislation, where you actually forced to pay out a lot of your distributions, even though a lot of the companies are missing out on their interim dividend payments, they won't be able to do that the whole year. So I think that there's going to be huge opportunities in the property stocks going forward. That's my personal opinion. It's actually one sector of the market that has been the hardest hit. And unless they're going to change the legislation, it's going to be great opportunity.
What do you think the turnaround time? What do you think the turnaround time for the REIT sector would be after the hardening is taken?
Sure. No, has anyone got a crystal ball?
I wish I knew the answer.
But I think people, I think that's also where people are going to have to change. I think the times of quick profits are changed. I think you've got to look at long-term horizons. And I think that's been one of the important things that we've always said in our office, is that you must invest in things that you're happy to hold for a long time, because you are going to go through ups and downs, bad stages, pandemics, who knows what you're going to go through. But if you buy quality assets or quality businesses and you prepare to hold onto them for a long time, eventually they should come back. So no one can time the market, no one can time going into a business, but I think you've got to have your wits about you and look for the opportunities in these difficult times. And I think this is when people will make money, but not quickly. And if you've got a short-term horizon, then
U-shaped recovery as opposed to V-shaped recovery.
absolutely.
Predict.
100%. It's going to be a long time. And you've also got to be, you've got to keep enough liquidity that you can go through whatever cycles we are going to be thrust upon us and survive.
Thank you. I think before we end, time is coming up. I'm trying to jump to one of the questions that we have here. Leron asked at the beginning of the chat to you, Eric. Were you on the board with the acquisition of the stake in Cell-C by Blue Label? And do you believe Cell-C can be turned around? Provide some insight into that. Would be great.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the question.
Were you on the board of Blue Label when they bought this stake in Cell-C, and your advice on that? And do you believe that Cell-C can be turned around with the current economic climate?
Well, that's another one of my biggest disappointments. Although we personally weren't involved, we don't own one Cell-C share. Blue Label put in 5.5 billion rand to buy a 25% share. And you know what's happened since then. But to make matters even worse, they then put in another 15 million rand, and my partner, one of the levies, phones me and tells me this is your wonderful opportunity. At 15 rand, the share was trading at 18 rand and everything is going fine. You'll get an excellent return. So we poured in another 15 million into the company. The share today is trading at 2 rand 40 cents. It was trading at 18 rand, and we had, and we've still got, because we haven't sold a share, by the way. We're not sellers, we're long term. We're hoping it will turn. There's a good chance that Blue Label will turn. There's a good chance that Cell-C will find supporters to keep them afloat. And if Cell-C stays afloat, then Blue Label is an absolute steal at the moment. On the other hand, if they don't, because they're such a huge customer, you could find that share being worth next to nothing. So depends on your own views about it. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. All right, I think we've run out of time and we don't want to keep everyone here too late, so I'll hand over to Aaron to close it off. But from my side, thank you very much for your time. Really, thank you once again.
Eric and Dionne, thank you so much. It was an honor to hear from you. It was, I really enjoyed it. I thoroughly learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else did as well. So thank you very much for your time and everything that we got. Thanch you.
Thank you.
Hilly and Ryan.
Pleasure, thank you.
And Hilly and Ryan, thank you as well. And please, guys, join us next week. We have an unbelievable speaker as well next week. Please join us. And thank you. Have a good evening and a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you, John.
Thanks, guys.